Welcome ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and everything in between. I'm Zen and I believe this is video 5 of the form series where we are going to be taking these very boring basic radio buttons and checkboxes and converting them to these big jobbers over here. Okay, and here's a little hint, these don't even exist, these aren't real. These aren't real radio buttons, this is not a real checkbox, but it does its job, it's awesome. And this is what we're going to do. So if you're interested, come and watch this video. Let's get into it. So as I said before, these aren't real radio buttons. They are fakes. It still works perfectly when you're sending your form or when they register. That data will still be sent. But these aren't real radio buttons, and the reason for that is that the cross-browser support and the amount of customization for our radio buttons and tick boxes is rather poor, and therefore we have to fake it. And so what we're going to do in this video is actually have a look at those issues, and then we are going to then create our solution, which is over here. Also guys, I've noticed that when I was watching my videos back, and to be honest I'm probably the only person who is at the moment, the videos weren't very readable, watchable, if it wasn't in 1080p. So I've tried to make things a lot bigger and hopefully that will be more useful for you guys. It would be nice if you actually gave me feedback so I can check that this is right, but as I say, I believe it's better, but if you do comment, let me know, that would be great. Okay, so into this. What we're going to do is, before we actually start producing a solution, like I said, we're going to look at the problem. So to do that, we are going to create a brand new file. Where did it go? Oh, it doesn't look like I created one. So we want to create a brand new file, and we are going to call it radio-issues. Okay. And as usual, we're going to put in username a HTML5 basic page. We're going to close that so we can actually have some more space. And again, as normal, we're going to put in an internal style sheet. And we're going to start down here. So what we're going to do is create two basic radio buttons, followed by a checkbox with their labels, and then view them. And then we're going to use some CSS to see what we can do and then see how it looks across different browsers. So when it comes to radio button and checkboxes, I prefer to do the radio buttons and checkboxes first, then put in the label. So let's do that. So radio buttons are inputs. Okay, so colon radio, and in fact I'll do the whole thing here. We're going to have a class of radio and an ID of radio as well, because I'm very imaginative. I'm going to leave the name alone because we're not going to worry about that. Okay, and then we're going to put in our label, and it's going to have a class of radio hyphen label. It's not really a bare method job here. In the for, we're going to have to put in obviously ID, put in ID. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, you idiot? ID we call is rad1, and then for rad1. Okay, and label is just label for rad1, and then we're going to repeat it. So it'll be input colon radio hash rad2 dot radio. There we go, finally did one right today. And then we'll do the label, and for equals rad2 with a class of radio label, and then label for rad2. And then we'll do our checkbox, so it's just input colon checkbox, hash check and dot check. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, and then again label for check. We'll use the same radio label class, doesn't need an ID, and then label do, okay, label for check. And now we shall save that, and using the live server, which if you haven't got installed, please see my video on the USB web server, the 7pem thing, and that'll show you how to get all that sorted. So, okay, I've made a boo-boo. I forgot to put in new lines at the end of my labels. Just a little bit of basic formatting. And a bit on that one as well, because it's always good to be consistent. Let's bring that back up. There we go. So, and I'll just zoom in for us. So that's what it looks like. You know, normal. Yes, this is why I need to put the name in. Okay, I'm having one of those days, so test and test. Save that. Let's go back in. There we go. Okay. Dum here forgot that radio buttons need to share the same name so that the browser knows that they are connected. So there we have our normal radios buttons and the checkbox. So this is it on Chrome, but on our lovely USB pen we also have Mozilla Firefox. It came out quite quick, as well as Opera, and we're going to use them as well. So let me go back to Firefox, Chrome. Let's copy that. Let's now go into Firefox and paste it into there. Yeah, that's where we want to go. And again, I'll zoom in. I think it's about 400%. Okay, right now I want to go up to 300. Okay, and again, this is a good little hint here. And you can see how these did not get any bigger. Okay. All right, and then we'll do the same in Opera. Not sure what they are, but we won't look at them. Paste and go. And again, let's zoom in. All this is go up to 500, but let's go back to 400. And this is how it looks in Opera. So let's just move this around a bit. See if we get them in the same place. So there we have it, a side-by-side comparison at the three browsers, Chrome, Firefox and Opera, zoomed in at 300%, and we can actually have a look at them properly. So we can see that we've got a nice little tick in the Chrome for the checkbox, and we've got a circle with an inner circle for that. For Firefox, you can see it does not change size. Notice that they go blue when you hover over them. That's quite a nice little effect. Doesn't happen in Chrome. It does happen in Opera. Okay, so that's quite a nice little effect. Again, we get a nice little tick box in there, but it has stayed small. This thing will not grow up. It's Peter Pan, does not want to go bigger. If we look at Opera, Opera again does its own thing. The little dot's quite a bit smaller. It's an empty circle. This has got a gradient shading in, and it's got its own little tick box. Okay, and you can see straight away that even zooming in, this did not change. And it will probably come to no surprise to you that when we actually try to resize these as well, Firefox is going to be the difficult one. So let's see if we are right. Let's see what we can do. So we've got a class of radio. In fact, I could do it just on the type, but I shall still do it with a dot if we want to do the class. Okay, so one of the first things we can do is see what happens if we change the width. So width is, let's make them 100 pixels. And let's make the height 100 pixels. Okay, because it may try and keep him in aspect ratio, and therefore you may need to do it to both of them, to both width and height for this to work. Let's also do this for check. It's a class of check, so dot check, and let's just use the same values. We'll save that, and let's go back up and see what happens. Well, looks like I need to zoom back out in this one, so let's take it down to, there you go, 175, and we have big ones. I don't want to show off, but you know, there we go. And then let's have a look in Firefox. Okay, let's zoom back out. Was it 175? Well, that is a bit like me, as my missus would say, a complete and utter letdown. We seem to have got bigger space area around it, but the actual checkboxes themselves have done nothing. Let's have a look in Opera. Okay, and Opera seems to have been following the same. I have to zoom out quite a bit for Opera. So again, in Opera, we have just a bigger button. So we can see that at the moment, Firefox, which used to be one of the most favorite browsers out there, is not doing very well at all. Okay, Opera is behaving itself, so is Chrome. But what if we don't want the grey colour? Okay, I know grey's very in at the moment, but what if we don't want grey? Maybe our website's red and we want the stuff red. So let's see if we can do that. So let's see if we can go for border. Let's see if we can change it completely. So let's see if we can go for 5 pixel dash hash F00 and background color. We're going to do these different colors to see if they actually do anything. So let's go for that aqua, and let's just see what happens when we use the term color. And let's go for lime green. Lime and lime green seems to be its own color. And again, we'll do that on checkbox. Okay, so actually these are new ones. Some of these are new I haven't done before, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. And look at that. Look at that customization that we've got there on Chrome. Absolutely nothing. So look at Firefox, and Firefox has stayed consistently awful. What about Opera? That man from Del Monte, or Opera, he said no. Now, to be honest, the Opera and Chrome being almost identical is not really a surprise, since I believe they both now use Chromium, and Opera used Chromium, but I thought Firefox did as well. But Firefox has stuck to its belt to be absolutely useless. So this is the reason why we don't use, why we can't use the default technique on our forms, because you can see the customization is limited, and it's definitely not across all 3 browsers. And we do want a consistent look, because even if we look at, like say, the Chrome and Opera, they are quite different. They are distinctly different. They are 2 different styles. And Firefox just doesn't have a style. And so if we want to make it, more like our own website, more in line with our own form, we have to create a solution. Now, our solution is based on one nifty little trick, and that is this bit. Whether or not you realize it or not, the label acts as an extension to the hit area of the checkbox and radio buttons, okay? And it is this little trick which is what saves us and allows us to create a customized version, because without it we'd be lost. Well, we wouldn't be lost, we'd just have to do a heck of a lot of hard work to get around it, but it's this label which completely and utterly saves us. So let's start looking at the solution then. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is get back into Visual Studio Code. We'll leave them open for the moment because we'll check our form out on them as we're making it. And what we want to do is obviously close this one down. We want to open up our last form, which was, I think it was something like Reg 2. And because we like to keep histories, we're going to do File, Save As, and we're going to call it, can you guess, Reg-3. It's like you read my mind. Okay, so now we've done that, what we need to do is scroll all the way down. We'll deal with the CSS later. We're going to start sorting out the HTML, okay? And so here we go. We are with the radio button. So there's a little bit of work that we need to do in the formatting of these so that they look the way we want them to. So what we do is, it's actually fairly simple. First of all, we put in a div and we're going to call this reg _ radio -group. Okay, so for each and every radio button, we'll put them inside a div, and you know what I'm like, I like my formatting done properly, so they get indented as well. For those who don't know how to do that, if you look at the letter P on your keyboard, then you're looking in the wrong place. Go to the left hand side of your keyboard on a British keyboard, and to the left of the letter Q is the tab button, and that's what you need to do to indent your code. If you want to indent it or outdent it, put it in the opposite direction. If you use Shift and Tab, that will take it backwards. Okay, so Tab key will indent it in, Shift and Tab will take it out. So there you go. Right, so the other thing we need to do is that we're going to take our label and we're going to open it up a little bit. So I'm just going to slide this over so we can see it a bit better. And here you can see I'm going to move the text down. And then in here, I'm going to add in a span tag. I will do if I can spell it, a span tag. And I'm going to call it reg _ fake -radio. Okay, and then obviously because I like my stuff to be cleaner, and I can now also get rid of this BR as well, because as we know, div elements are block level elements by default. So after this, at the end there, this will force this radio button down into the next one. And so here we have the changes that we've encased it all with a div called reg radio group. And inside our label, we have added a span tag called reg fake radio. And what we need to do is repeat that for the other elements. Okay, so let's do that. And again, always give yourself some nice spacing between your elements. It makes them more readable. So again, it is reg radio group. It's always annoying that you need to jump that down there, but that's life. And then jump this, put it down to 2, bring it up here, span dot reg fake radio. Jump that down, get rid of BR. Okay, whoops, come back down. And again, we will repeat that for the last radio button as well. So again, dot reg radio group. Move Mr. Div down. Across. Go to end of label or inside of label and do a span of reg fake radio. Or reg _. Let's not get that wrong. Okay. In case you're wondering, I'm only using a single hyphen here, not a double hyphen like we used here. Okay, The reason for that is that this is part of the name, fake radio. So the single hyphen is just saying that this is a multi-word name. Okay, the double underscore is saying that these are part of this block element. Remember, it's BEM, so this is the block, and this is a two-worded element. Whereas here, this was the modifier. Okay, so here is the block form, here is the element label, but it is modified with that radio extension. So this is why this is a single, because it's just a multi-worded element name. So there. Okay, so we've got div there, and then we do the same for checkbox. Okay, I could use the same naming convention. Okay, because we've got reg radio here. It's a shame that this is reg check, so it messes it up. So it's really down to you. A large part of me says I should still do them as checkboxes, because it could be that in reality you would want to have your checkboxes formatted slightly different from your radio buttons, and therefore they should be different. And that does mean that where I've done this reg label, that should be reg label check, and you would be absolutely right. I was just being lazy then, and so I'm paying for it now. But there you go, that's life. So div reg double underscore check hyphen group. I'll learn how to spell group. Okay, group. And then we're going to move that div from there down to here, double tab it in, highlight those two, just need to single tab those, got carried away, drop down the label, insert a span with a class of reg double underscore fake hyphen check. Okay, and then I didn't do that on the other one, but we'll drop down the label, get rid of that BR. I noticed I didn't do that on the previous one. Drop down the label, and add two BRs there, you see. This is why you've got to check your stuff. You don't want to get it wrong. So there we have it. We have the several, 1, 2, 3 radio buttons and one checkbox. Now when we save that and we view it, let's just open this one up. And you can see at the moment that has made no difference to our site. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't make any difference. And the reason why it won't is that even though we've changed the structure, essentially, the radio button is still the same. The label's the same. It's got this span in the middle, but the span tag itself is empty. And if you're not sure, spans are inline elements, okay, which means that they take up the minimum amount of space possible. And since it's empty, it's taken up 0 pixels by 0 pixels. So structurally, our form has not changed. It's now when we go into the CSS, where in a lot of times it's the same with web design, where the magic will happen. So we scroll it all the way up to the top. And what we're going to do is to start modifying the code up here, just little bits by little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to here. Okay, so below reg, but above reg label, because what we're going to do is we're going to write a rule for the group one. Okay, so the, if you like, the parent div rule for the radio groups and for the check group. So it's dot reg double underscore radio hyphen group, and then we're going to apply this to both rules, so comma, and then dot reg double underscore check hyphen group, and we're going to do position relative. And actually that's the whole reason of why we have that parent tag going around the radio buttons and the checkbox is so that we can set a position relative. And the reason for this is it's crucial that we have that so our positioning rules will work. We're going to be using some absolute positioning rules, and because we don't know what form these are going into, okay, I mean obviously we do know because we're writing this form right now, but the idea here is that the code I'm showing you can be applied to any website that you might make. And therefore, you might have a form which is very specific, and you might have some absolute positioning going on, within your form. And we need to make sure that the code that we apply only affects the elements that we're working with, and that our code is reliable. It gives the same results each time. And so we need to sort of ensure that our position values that we give do work. Okay, so putting in this position relative means that the elements don't move, okay, they stay where they are, but it means that now when we start putting in values, it's relative to the radio group itself. I hope that makes sense. It does to me. Okay, so the next bit is we are going to be playing with, I'll just scroll this down. So like I said before, we've now set this as a position relative. It doesn't move, but it means that now when we do rules of stuff inside these, position wise it's based on this position, not necessarily off the form or off the page. And what we're going to do now is play about with this bit here, the fake radio button. Okay, and that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to write some code to produce that. It's a span item, and that's not a problem. And let's do that. Now the span's inside the label, so I shall do that here. Okay, because it's like I said before, I like to try and keep things in the right places. So it is reg _ fake - radio, and then most of these rules will apply to the checkbox as well, so we'll do that as well. So reg _ oops, don't forget that dot. Reg _ fake check, and we open it up, and we're going to give it a height of 1.5 rem, and we're going to give it a width of 1.5 rem, and this is where the magic starts. We're going to give it a border of 3 pixels solid, and we're going to give it the 3/8. We're going to use a border radius of 50%, and that makes it a perfect circle. Now, even though it's a span, which is technically inline, we're now going to tell it it's going to be inline block. And this bit's important. We're going to do position absolute, and it's only because I've done this for my form so I know what I want to do here. I'm also going to do a left value of 0 and a top value of -0.1 rem. Okay, and this is just to try and get the text so it's more or less aligned with the center of the circle. I'm making images with my hand here, you can't see them. So we save that, and we'll just see what that does. So, and here we have 3 big circles, or 4, I'll learn to count. Okay, is this like Aldi on its side? Who knows? Okay, now we can see they're roughly over where the normal checkbox and radio buttons are. That's not a problem. Obviously, this last one we want to be a square, and we'll sort that out in a moment. But I say we'll sort that out in a moment. We're going to do some more code because we need to put in the middle parts of the buttons, and they don't exist yet. And this is a really, really cool part of CSS. Okay, a very sort of unrelated part of code, which I'm not sure if it came out in CSS2 or CSS3. I only was made aware of it during CSS3, but it may have been out before. And this is the after tag, and this is an amazing bit of CSS. I cannot stress this enough. Put in CSS. Sorry, reg fake radio double colon after. Okay, this is something that I used to have to do, and I still do in certain circumstances with JavaScript. Okay, this after tag allows us to actually input HTML using CSS, and that to me is just pretty darn amazing. So fake check after. Okay, so in this, the first thing we do is put in content. Now, we don't actually want any content in there. I've never actually tried it, but it's probably possible that you could. In fact, you can. You must always have the content tag in this, okay, or content attribute would be a more correct term to use. So you must always have content, but you can leave it as empty. But you could, in theory, put in an image. And if you look at the checkbox, for example, in all three of the browsers, they use a tick box. So you could perhaps find a tick box image and reference that instead for its content. I'm not going to do that. And again, we're going to go for position absolute. We're going to display it as block. And we're going to do a height. Now, what's nice about this is that you can change the height as much as you like. Okay, the height and width values are entirely up to you. I have basically decided I wanted a 0.1 of a rem sort of gap between my elements. You could technically have it the same height and width as the other one, so you create a complete solid button, and we'll have a look at that actually in a moment. But I've gone for 1.3. And of course, because of this, we need to give it a border radius again of 50% to make it a perfect circle. And then we position that, and we do top 50%, left 50%, and then we do this weird little transform translate, and we will be looking at CSS animations, and this is where you will learn about these bits of code. But essentially, the top and left, as you know from normal CSS rules, are referring to the top and left hand edge of our element. We want this dead in the center. So what we do is say we want its own size to be shifted 50% across. And what I'll do, I'll take this code off a bit later on so you can see what we're talking about there. And we're going to do a background color, and again we'll make it the same color, so we'll do hash AAA. Okay, we'll just save that, and then we go back to look at it here, and there you go. So you can see it's filled in, and this is why it's 1.3, because it gives me this 0.1 rem space around the whole thing. Okay, so if you make it smaller, it also you'll have a bigger gap. If you make it bigger, you know, you'll fill it up. So like I said, if we go for 1.5, it's a solid, oh actually it's not quite a solid block, it should be, but it's not. So you might need to mess about with it a little bit. Okay, let's go for 1.6 just to fill it properly, because I can see gaps. There you go, completely filled in. So, you know, and then if you really want to, you could go for like 1.1 and make it more like the opera style. Okay, where it's getting a lot smaller. I personally just say I preferred it at 1.3. I thought it looked nicer. Okay, so that's what it looks like that. In fact, why don't I just do my side-by-side thing? Oh yeah, because the text is getting big now, so it makes it a bit difficult. And likewise, like I said, if we got rid of this transform line, so let me just delete that and save that. Okay, we can see it's gone in the wrong place. Okay, And this is because the referencing we're making is to this top left-hand corner edge, which you can't really do on a circle, but you know what I mean here. So what we said is take your whole shape and move it 50% back off your own width and 50% up off your own width, and that puts it perfectly where it needed to be. So I'll just quickly undo that there and save it, and we see they move back into the correct place. Now, as I said before, we want our checkbox to be a square. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a rule in. And basically, again, we're doing this underneath. So we've got the normal radio and checkbox there, and then the extremely clever after rule. And there is also a before rule, if you're wondering. And again, we'll look at that when we do CSS animations a lot more. And all we're going to do here is do dot reg _ fake check, and then again dot reg fake check after, and then we're going to do border radius 0. And it's important that you put in 0, not none. Why? Because I tried it and none doesn't work. It's a invalid value. So we save that, and now we have our square. Okay, now at the moment they don't do anything, they are permanent. Okay, so what we have to do first is we'll make them invisible, and we're going to use that. We're going to do that by setting the opacity value. Okay, think of opacity as transparency. Okay, so opacity of 0 is a transparency of 1. It's fully transparent. And an opacity of 1 means it's completely solid, and everything else in between is, well, some level of transparency. So again, we save that, and they disappear. And then the next bit, I'm going to maximize this because this next rule is quite long. Okay, and this is a rather advanced bit of CSS because we are hitting quite advanced rules here. So the next bit here is .reg radio. So we're still referencing our radio buttons. I'm saying that when the radio button is checked, okay, so again, this is a pseudo state, then we use the tiled, which if you're looking on a UK QWERTY keyboard, it is to the right of the @ sign. Okay, so look at the letter L on your keyboard and go 3 to the right just before the enter keyboard, and it should be there. And you'll need to do the shift button to get it. Okay, so above, I should have just said your hashtags really, shouldn't I? Okay, and you can put a space in here. Okay, spaces are allowed. So tiled, and this means sibling. So we're saying when this is checked, we want to go to the sibling, which is the reg label radio, and then we're going down to its child, which is reg fake radio, and we're looking for it after code. Okay, and then we need to do the same thing for the checkbox. So reg _ check colon checked sibling reg, oops, don't forget that dot reg _ label _ radio, because remember it's the same. I should have really made it different and I didn't. Reg _ fake - check _ after. Whew. And then we're going to set that to an opacity of 1. Okay, so that's quite big. We save that. Okay, so what has that done? Well, you can see straight away that this first one is already highlighted, and the reason for that is, if we remember in our previous videos, no, it would have been the last one, we put the checked rule in for the first radio item. Okay, so we can see that that is actually already working because I am amazing. And if we click on the other ones, we can see that they are working as well. And same with the checkbox. Look at that. Click on, click off. It works perfectly. And like I said before, it works as well with these. Okay, so you can click on the text and it works fine. Now, what we'd like to do with the text is to change it from a pointer to Mr. Pointy Hand. Okay, I think it's actually called a pointer. So we're going to do a bit of CSS to do that. And we're also going to actually hide the original checkboxes and radio buttons. So how do we do that? Well, like I said, it is nice and easy. So the first thing we do is get rid of the checkbox and radio. So we need to double check what we've called them. So our actual radio has got class of reg radio. And what does our checkbox have? Reg check. So all we need to do is define it. That's a label. So we've got radio group, label radio. So we don't actually have a CSS rule for them at the moment. So we're going to put them in. And we're going to put them in the correct order. Okay, so we've got the reg, it's inside a radio group. And in this case, it's actually really before the labels. So we'll put them in before labels. This is where the order thing goes a bit janky, but it doesn't matter too much. So we do, whoops, reg, _ radio, comma, ref. I think that's going to be reg, _ check. And then we're just going to be doing, what we're going to do is that we're just going to put in display none. Okay, so we save that and we go back and look at the code and we can see it's completely disappeared. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, like I say, is to get the text into a pointer. So that is on the label. So we just need to put it into there. It's really with the radio button. Okay, so this is an important bit to remember. It's actually in the radio button, not in the normal label. So having this radio label extension was a really good idea because it's going to save us here. So what we're going to do is do a cursor of pointer. Save that. And now, look at that, see, these ones, they don't act as that, but these ones do. And that just makes it a little bit more useful. And I know what you're going to say, it looks a bit messy, and it is. So we're just going to fix that again, because we've already found the right place to do it. So we've already got font sizes and stuff like that. We've got the text aligned correctly. We can now move them around a bit by using a margin. And we're going to go 0 for top, 0 for right. We're going to give ourselves a 1 rem left-hand margin. And also, if you notice, it was causing us problems below them as well. They were overlapping. So let's do a bottom, oh sorry, that was the bottom margin. So that will get rid of that, and that is the left-hand margin. So top and right are 0, bottom and left are 1. Let's see how much of a change that has made. Well, that's a lot better. Okay, we've got the spacing, but we still need more space on moving it across. So we're on a margin for that one. What we'll do, we'll just give it a left-hand padding. So padding left, and we'll make that 2.5. Save it, view it, and look at that. Okay, what's nice about that, and I have to zoom out a little bit now, so this form's getting a bit big, it is basically still in line with the the same format as the rest of our page. Okay, we could change these to make them black, any color we want. We have the ability now to change this background color. We could put a gradient in it. Like I said before, rather than having these images, we could put in a picture of a banana if you really wanted to. We can do anything we really want to. Okay, it's a really nice customize system. And as we said, the important thing here is it cross-browser. Well, let's have a look. Let's make sure we've got the address. Open up in Firefox. Look at that, the devil of radio buttons and checkboxes. It works absolutely fine. Works on these, no problem. And should be no surprise that Opera works perfectly as well, exactly as we want it to. So there we have it. We've now got a nice customizable radio buttons and checkboxes, which means that as we start to change the way our form looks, we're now able to change the way our buttons work as well. And that's what we'll be doing in the next video in the series. We'll start looking at ways of perhaps changing the way these look. I'm not going to say these are the best forms I'm going to be creating. It's to give you an idea of things that you could do to start you off. So, as usual, I hope this video has been useful. Please do like, subscribe and comment. Do tell me whether or not this zoomed in version helps you a lot better. Please comment, because I am very, very lonely. And as usual, I'll see you next time. This is Zen signing out.